Today, we're about to uncover the legendary fire engines that saved thousands of lives during America's worst disasters. From the burning docks of Pearl Harbor to the flooded streets of New Orleans, from the collapsed towers of 9/11 to the shattered freeways of Northridge, fire engines have rolled toward America's worst disasters, carrying crews who understood that retreat wasn't an option when lives depended on their courage. These engines responded to disasters that killed thousands, but their crews saved tens of thousands more. December 7th, 1941. Fire engines under attack at Pearl Harbor. At 7:48 a.m. on December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor transformed from America's Pacific stronghold into a blazing inferno that would change history forever. As Japanese aircraft turned the harbor into hell on earth, a small fleet of fire engines became the first Americans to fight back against overwhelming odds. The attack created fires beyond imagination. Battleships carrying hundreds of tons of fuel oil erupting in flames, aircraft fuel creating rivers of fire, and ammunition explosions that shook the earth. The unsung heroes rolled engines from Pearl Harbor's fire department and Hickam Field's crash rescue units. Engine Company 1's 1939 American Lafrance pumper. This engine, stationed at Pearl Harbor's main fire station, was among the first to respond when the USS Arizona exploded with force equivalent to 1,000 tons of TNT. The crew, Chief Tender John Carrera, Engineer Harry Danner, and Hosman James Rasmussen, drove directly toward the harbor as burning fuel oil spread across the water. The challenges were unprecedented. Water pressure dropped as harbor infrastructure failed. Burning fuel oil floated on water, making traditional suppression impossible. Japanese aircraft continued strafing runs, targeting anything that moved. The engine's crew worked for 12 hours straight, saving the submarine base fuel storage tanks that would have created explosions visible from Honolulu. Hickam Field's crash truck, a 1940 Buffalo fire engine converted for aircraft rescue, responded to burning aircraft while under direct enemy fire. The crew, led by Fire Chief William Benedict, drove between hangars as machine gun bullets shattered windows and punctured the water tank. They saved 3 hangars and prevented fuel storage explosions that could have crippled Pacific Fleet operations. These engines operated without communications, backup, or retreat options. Crews made life-or-death decisions independently while enemy aircraft continued attacking. Fire Chief Benedict later reported, "We weren't fighting fires. We were fighting the Japanese Navy with water and foam while they shot at us." Official records show Pearl Harbor's fire engines prevented fuel storage explosions that would have extended the attack's impact by months. Their actions saved infrastructure critical to America's Pacific War response, proving that sometimes fire engines determine the course of history. October 8, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire, engines against Armageddon. On October 8, 1871, Chicago became the center of America's greatest urban fire disaster, when flames consumed 4 square miles of the nation's fastest-growing city. For 72 hours straight, the Chicago Fire Department's steam engines battled an inferno that burned so hot it created its own weather system. The fire started in the O'Leary barn driven by winds exceeding 60 miles per hour. Flames towered 100 feet above buildings. Chicago's 185 firefighters faced an enemy that seemed unstoppable. America Engine Company. Number 6. This Silsby steam engine, pulled by 3 horses and operated by engineer James Fitzpatrick, responded to the initial alarm at 9:40 p.m. For the next 3 days, this engine never stopped pumping, drawing water from the Chicago River while flames surrounded the crew on 3 sides. Steam engines of 1871 required constant attention, maintaining boiler pressure, feeding coal, and managing water supplies while operating in extreme conditions. Engineer Fitzpatrick and his crew worked 18-hour shifts, catching brief rest periods while other crews maintained operations. Their engine pumped over 150,000 gallons during the fire's peak intensity. Little Giant Engine Company Number 3. This engine made the last stand at the Chicago River's North Branch, creating a water barrier that prevented flames from jumping the river and consuming the entire north side. The crew, led by Captain Michael Conway, positioned their engine at maximum range and pumped for 14 hours straight while buildings burned around them. Conway later reported, "We weren't fighting a fire. We were fighting a dragon that breathed flames 200 feet high. The only thing between Chicago's total destruction and survival was our little steam engine. When the fire finally ended, Chicago Fire Department engines had prevented total city destruction. Official investigations credited steam engines with saving the South Side and creating fire breaks that limited damage to 2,100 acres instead of the entire city. Without these engines, Chicago might never have recovered to become America's industrial center. September 11, 2001. Engines into the towers of hell. At 8:46 a.m. on September 11, 2001, American Airlines Flight 11 transformed the North Tower of the World Trade Center into a 110-story inferno that would test fire engines and their crews beyond human endurance. What followed became the greatest loss of firefighter life in American history and the ultimate test of emergency response equipment. The impact created fires on multiple floors, with temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, while jet fuel acted as accelerant spreading flames throughout the building's core. Within minutes, the FDNY dispatched over 200 fire engines, ladder trucks, and rescue units, the largest emergency response in department history. Engine 7, the Warhorse. This 1996 Seagrave pumper, stationed in Manhattan's Lower East Side, was among the first to arrive at the World Trade Center. Captain Francis Callahan, engineer Mike Weinberg, and firefighters Vladimir Boyarsky and Robert Crawford drove directly to the North Tower's base while debris rained from above. Engine 7 established water supply operations at the North Tower's base, connecting to street hydrants while dodging falling debris that included office furniture, building materials, and, tragically, people. The crew knew their engine would become the lifeline for firefighters climbing 80-plus flights of stairs in full gear. Engine 54, the Pride of Midtown, working with Ladder Company. 4. This engine carried Captain Patrick Brown and his crew into the South Tower minutes before the second plane impact. Their engine maintained water supply operations for rescue teams attempting to reach trapped civilians on upper floors. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed, crushing Engine 54 and killing its entire crew. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower fell, destroying Engine 7 and taking the lives of Captain Callahan and firefighter Boyarsky. These engines, built to last decades, became twisted metal memorials to crews who gave everything. Engine 10, 10 House. Located directly across from the World Trade Center, this engine's crew witnessed both tower collapses from their firehouse windows. Despite losing their building and equipment to debris, the crew continued rescue operations using borrowed engines and equipment for the next 72 hours. September 11th claimed 343 FDNY firefighters, 75 fire engines, and 23 ladder trucks. But the engines that survived continued operating in conditions resembling a war zone, searching through debris fields that burned for months while toxic dust compromised every mechanical system. The FDNY replaced lost engines with new apparatus dedicated to fallen crews. Engine 7's replacement carries the names of Callahan, Boyarsky, and Crawford, ensuring their sacrifice rolls through Manhattan streets every day, ready to answer the next call that others might flee from. August 29, 2005. Hurricane Katrina. Engines in the flood. On August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina transformed New Orleans into an apocalyptic flood zone where traditional firefighting became impossible and fire engines evolved into amphibious rescue vehicles. As 80% of the city disappeared underwater, fire engines became arcs of survival in America's greatest natural disaster. Katrina's storm surge breached levees in over 50 locations, flooding New Orleans with billions of gallons of water reaching depths of 20 feet. The New Orleans Fire Department's 73 engines faced scenarios no training had prepared them for. How do you fight fires when the entire city is underwater? Engine 18, the Swamp Rats. This 2003 Pierce pumper from the 9th Ward found itself operating in 4 feet of floodwater as the crew transitioned from firefighting to water rescue. Captain David Mitchell and his crew removed firefighting equipment and converted their engine into a rescue platform, using the pump to clear debris and create safe passages. The engine's crew rescued over 200 people during the first 48 hours, using ladder equipment to reach second-story windows and hose lines to pull swimmers to safety. Engineer Robert Thompson reported, "Our engine became a boat that couldn't float, but it could still save lives." Engine 39, the Quarter Rats. Stationed in the French Quarter, this engine remained operational throughout Katrina because the quarter sits on higher ground. The crew used their 2001 E1 pumper to maintain fire protection for the historic district, while coordinating rescue operations throughout the flooded city. Floodwater contained sewage, chemicals, and debris that destroyed normal firefighting operations. Engines operating in flood conditions suffered contamination damage that required complete rebuilds, while crews faced health hazards from simply breathing the toxic air. Fire engines worked alongside Coast Guard helicopters and boats, with engines serving as staging areas for rescue operations and supply distribution. The NOFD's engines became command posts, medical facilities, and supply depots as normal emergency infrastructure completely failed. Katrina destroyed 31 New Orleans fire engines and damaged 40 others beyond economical repair. The department's replacement fleet incorporated lessons learned from the disaster, including sealed electrical systems, enhanced communications, and equipment designed for dual firefighting and rescue operations. The engines that survived Katrina became symbols of resilience for New Orleans residents returning to rebuild their city. These machines that had operated underwater proved that even in America's worst natural disaster, firefighters and their engines refused to abandon the communities they serve. April 19, 1995, Oklahoma City. Bombing. Engines against terror. At 9:02 a.m. on April 19, 1995, domestic terrorism shattered Oklahoma City when Timothy McVeigh's truck bomb destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. In the chaos that followed, fire engines became the first line of defense against America's deadliest domestic terror attack. The blast created a crater 30 feet wide and 8 feet deep while collapsing 9 floors of the federal building's north face. The explosion was heard 55 miles away and registered 3.0 on seismic monitors. Into this devastation rolled engines from Oklahoma City Fire Department, knowing survivors remained trapped in the rubble. Engine 9. This 1991 Pierce pumper arrived within 4 minutes of the explosion, finding devastation that resembled a war zone. Captain Chris Fields and his crew immediately began search and rescue operations while establishing water supply for dust suppression and potential secondary fires. The building's partial collapse created unstable structures that could fall at any moment, while ruptured gas lines threatened secondary explosions. Engine 9's crew worked with structural engineers to identify safe approach routes while maintaining water supplies for rescue operations. Engine 7. Positioned on the building's south side, this engine's crew established the primary medical treatment area where survivors and victims were brought from the collapse zone. Fire engines coordinated with ladder trucks to provide elevated access to upper floors where survivors remained trapped. Engine crews worked for 16 days straight, recovering 168 victims, including 19 children, from the building's daycare center. The psychological impact on firefighters was unprecedented. These crews had never dealt with intentional mass murder, especially involving children. The Oklahoma City National Memorial includes recognition of the fire engines and crews who responded to America's deadliest domestic terror attack. December 7, 2017, the Thomas Fire, engines in the Inferno. On December 4, 2017, the Thomas Fire erupted in Ventura County, California, becoming the largest wildfire in California history at that time. For over a month, fire engines battled flames that consumed 281,893 acres while threatening communities from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles. Driven by Santa Ana winds exceeding 80 miles per hour, the Thomas Fire spread at unprecedented rates, consuming 50,000 acres in the first 24 hours. Traditional wildfire suppression tactics became obsolete as the fire created its own weather system with 40-foot flame heights and fire tornadoes. Ventura County Engine 21. This 2015 Pierce Type 1 wildfire engine found itself defending the historic Ojai Valley as flames approached from 3 directions. Captain Maria Rodriguez and her crew made a stand at the Ojai Valley Inn, using their 3,000-gallon capacity to create defensive foam barriers. The crew worked for 36 hours straight, refilling their tank from swimming pools and decorative ponds while flames burned within 50 feet of the resort. Their defensive foam systems prevented ignition of landscaping that would have carried fire to the main structures. Cal Fire Engine 57. tasked with maintaining evacuation routes as fire crossed Highway 101. This engine crew, led by Captain James Thompson, operated in conditions with zero visibility and radiant heat exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. They maintained water spray on the highway while guiding civilian evacuations. Extreme heat caused equipment failures that crews had never experienced. Paint blistered off engines, electronic systems malfunctioned, and tire pressures exceeded safe limits. Crews adapted by operating in shorter shifts and using water spray to cool their own equipment. As the fire spread into Santa Barbara County, engines from across California converged in the largest wildfire response in state history. Over 300 engines operated simultaneously, coordinated through unified command systems that prevented tactical conflicts. The Thomas Fire burned for 40 days, requiring over 8,500 firefighters and 1,400 engines. Despite its size, coordinated engine operations prevented the loss of major communities like Ojai and Carpinteria, demonstrating that properly deployed fire engines can stop even the largest wildfires. After the Thomas Fire, participating engines required extensive rehabilitation due to extreme operating conditions. Many needed complete paint jobs, electronic system replacement, and pump rebuilds due to ash contamination and extreme heat exposure. January 17, 1994, Northridge earthquake, engines in the shakedown. At 4:30 a.m. on January 17, 1994, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake centered in Northridge shook Los Angeles with force that collapsed freeways, shattered buildings, and ignited fires throughout the San Fernando Valley. Fire engines responding to this disaster faced challenges that redefined urban emergency response. The Northridge earthquake killed 57 people, injured over 5,000, and caused $20 billion in damage. But the immediate threat came from ruptured gas lines that ignited fires throughout the affected area, while water mains broke, eliminating fire hydrant pressure across hundreds of square miles. LAFD Engine 88. Stationed in Northridge, this 1992 Pierce pumper was among the first to respond when the earthquake struck directly beneath their station. Captain Robert Martinez and his crew found their firehouse damaged and their engine pinned by debris from the station's partial collapse. After extricating their engine from station debris, Engine 88's crew discovered that every hydrant in their district was either damaged or without pressure. They adapted by drafting water from swimming pools, using the engine's tank supply to establish initial attack operations on multiple structure fires. LAFD Engine 60. Responding to the Interstate 5 freeway collapse, this engine crew worked with urban search and rescue teams to locate survivors trapped in vehicles crushed by concrete sections weighing hundreds of tons. The engine provided hydraulic power for rescue equipment and lighting for night operations. Without functional hydrants, engine crews developed innovative water sourcing techniques, using swimming pools, decorative fountains, and even aquarium stores to maintain water supplies. Some engines operated for days using tank water exclusively, while water department crews restored pressure. Engines dealt with multiple hazards simultaneously: gas-fed fires that couldn't be shut off due to damaged infrastructure, structural collapses that created new hazards hourly, and aftershocks that threatened crews working in damaged buildings. The earthquake triggered the largest mutual aid response in California history, with engines from across the state converging on Los Angeles. Coordinating 400-plus engines from different departments required unprecedented cooperation and unified command structures. Each disaster that tested American fire engines taught lessons written in steel, courage, and sometimes blood. Post-Katrina adaptations. Katrina proved that fire engines needed water rescue capabilities. Modern engines feature sealed electrical systems, enhanced communications, and equipment designed for dual firefighting and rescue operations in flood conditions. Seismic preparations. The Northridge earthquake led to fire engines with increased water tank capacity, self-contained equipment supplies, and communication systems that function when infrastructure fails. Counter-terrorism equipment. The Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11 attacks led to fire engines equipped with specialized detection equipment, enhanced protective gear, and training for weapons of mass destruction response scenarios. Wildfire evolution. Engines responding to disasters like the Thomas Fire incorporated enhanced heat shielding, improved air filtration systems, and foam capabilities designed for extreme fire conditions that exceed normal structural firefighting requirements. Today's fire engines incorporate lessons learned from every disaster we've explored. They carry enhanced communications, improved protection, and specialized equipment designed to handle scenarios that previous generations couldn't imagine. But they still depend on crews willing to drive toward danger. If these incredible stories of courage and service moved you, honor these heroes by hitting subscribe for more amazing emergency service stories. Next week, we're exploring the secret world of White House fire trucks, the specialized engines protecting America's most important address.